And good morning. It is a Monday edition of Glenn Clark Radio. I'm Glenn. He's Griffin. Thank you all for joining us for Project Game Day yesterday. We'll be back this coming Saturday immediately following Ravens-Steelers. PressBoxOnline.com/game day. Made possible by the Governor's Challenge, Hartford Holidays, Easy Pass, and HelpMyGamblingProblem.org. Myself, Rita, Femi, KZ, Steck, Griffin, the whole crew. Come hang out with us after the game of the century of the year this Saturday in Baltimore. Coming up on the program today, Andrew Catalon. He was on the call yesterday for CBS as the Ravens defeated the New York Giants soundly. Also, a little bit later on in the program, Jacob Calvin Meyer from the Baltimore Sun. If you weren't with us on Friday, I posed the question to Stan that Jacob Calvin Meyer had asked in a column, in a well-written column last week. And JCM heard our conversation, and we decided we would talk about it a little bit more. Has Mike Elias earned the benefit of the doubt, specifically related to pitching? Given that a year ago he swung a late trade for Corbin Burns, then obviously the Zach Eflin trade was the big hit of the deadline. We will talk about that with Jacob Calvin Meyer of the Baltimore Sun. And it's a Monday, so Jeremy Kahn will join us as he does every week. Plus, we need your pats on the ass. Get them in at Glenn Clark Radio. Someone is winning a $50 gift card to the Costas Inn. And remember, you got to get 2 offensive players. You pick 5 players or 5 Ravens, because one can be a coach. But among your 5 Ravens, 2 must be offensive players, 2 must be defensive players. Rank them 5-1 with 1 your man of the match. Hit me up at Glenn Clark Radio on Twitter. And you could be a winner of a $50 gift card to the Costas Inn. And I assure you, while you have family in this, people who are coming back home for the holidays, folks that you know that are from here but have moved elsewhere and are coming back home, this is a promise that I make to you. The effort that you are putting in for your holiday dinner, whether it's Christmas, whether it's a Hanukkah dinner, whatever it is, the effort that you are putting in, with respect, they are not nearly thinking about that dinner the way that they are thinking about getting crabs or crab soup. You get the point. That's what they want when they come home. You could have $50 spent at the Costas Inn, so all you got to do is chime in at Glenn Clark Radio on Twitter with or Blue Sky if you'd like, or email. Well, Griffin can't check my email, so I don't know if that'll work. I try to make it more accessible to everybody. It's gonna have to.
You can email producer at Pressbox.
Is that really a thing?
Yeah, it's a thing. Yeah.
I didn't know that you had that.
Just recently, but yeah. So
what? That's interesting.
Yeah.
What, do you guys have plans that don't involve me? Nobody's including me on this
stuff.
stuff.
Producer at PressBoxOnline.com.
Producer at Pressbox. Why does it have to? It couldn't be Griffin.
I don't know.
Like, is this a POTUS thing? Like, yeah. Like when you move on, the email address goes with the. That's a weird bit, dude. I got to be honest. I don't know what to make of that. All right. Well, if you don't use social media and you want to email producer at PressBoxOnline.com, it could go to any producer that we have here at PressBoxOnline.com. For example, it could also be. So, email producer at PressBoxOnline.com, and you can get in. By the way, congratulations to Griffin, who was obviously, he had told us that he knew bowl games.
Yeah.
There was a chance he was going undefeated in the bowl games.
Yeah, well, I mean, that
right up until Saturday and the first game of the bowl season.
So you see,
right up until
the thing is,
literally the first one.
It's because that bowl actually matters. That's why I couldn't I didn't like that. There's actually.
You're more of an exhibition bowl guy.
Yes, exactly.
I get it.
Exactly. Because I got the next one right. I mean,
speaking of which, by the way,
Alabama.
Shout out to Navy. Yeah. Hell yeah. God, that kicked ass. That was awesome, man. I don't get the. I used to go every year, and it was my favorite. It's my favorite event of the year. I don't get to go. It was one of the ones where I was like, damn, I wish I was there. Oh, I wish I was there because that ruled. What a day that was for Navy. I'm sure we'll be catching up with somebody during the course of the week. But congratulations to the Mids and to Coach Brian Newberry for his first win in the Army-Navy series and his first Commander-in-Chief's trophy as well as head coach. Dope moment. All right, that all being said, clearly the story of the day is the Ravens over the Giants 35-14, as they were supposed to do, but, that hasn't always gone their way this season when they were playing teams they were supposed to roll over. What are the headlines from yesterday? A, got the job done. B, got the job done.
Well, Lamar threw some passes.
That
were pretty good.
But this is, and I hate that I feel this way, but that's because he's Lamar Jackson. Lamar had a great game. Lamar did tungsten Armo Doyle things. Really? I'm so shocked. That's what he does. That's who he is. And I'm not. I know it's wrong for me to minimize it because, again, I come from an era of Ravens football where watching offense was as pleasant as sandpaper to your genitals, as I've said before. But we're just used to it. I swear to God, Lamar Jackson had statistically one of the great games of the season, and yet most of us that were watching were like, ho-hum. We didn't come away from it like, God, we really just witnessed something today with Lamar Jackson. We just came away from it like, yeah, Lamar played pretty well. But that's the standard that Lamar Jackson has set. And, again, a lot of it has to do with the opponent. If he does those things next week, we'll talk about it that way. I am concerned. I say I'm concerned.
Yeah.
The story of yesterday is next week. And that's what my column is going to be today at PressBoxOnline.com. This was checking a box. They checked the box. Whatever, you want to talk about the penalties, talk about the penalties. I do think it matters that they were over 100 yards in penalties again yesterday. As we discussed on the Project Game Day postgame show yesterday, not all penalties are made equal. And there's a big difference between constantly backing yourself up and shooting yourself in the foot versus penalties of aggression that are questionable. I think we're being too dismissive of the penalties on Brandon Stevens. I don't think Brandon Stevens had a good game yesterday. And I think Brandon Stevens is putting himself in a place where somebody else is going to be paying him. I still think he'll get paid, so I think he'll be fine, but I just don't think it's going to be here. I think this is going to be the Geno Stone thing kind of all over again, whereas on the flip side, Darius Washington might be setting himself up to be a guy who gets paid. Although, to be fair, a year ago we'd asked this question, we would have thought that Brandon Stevens was that guy and was going to get paid and was moving in that direction. It's just been that this year has kind of shown the difference between guy who can functionally play the position versus guy who can play the ball. And Brandon Stevens hasn't been that guy. So the more you have to see of Brandon Stevens, the more apprehensive you're going to be. That's the reality of it. And if George Pickens is back next week, and do we even have a guess on that yet? Have they even kind of veered down that road? I know obviously another big story is now TJ Watt, although it wasn't as bad as it looked like it might have been. When TJ Watt went down with a non-contact injury, there was real concern about what that could mean, but similar to Kyle Hamilton earlier this year, as it turns out it's not nearly that bad, and there's a genuine chance that TJ Watt plays against the Ravens on Saturday. But I don't know if we know any of the latest related to George Pickens. Clearly, you would think that the Pittsburgh Steelers, if there was any thought of, hey, we could put him out there, but maybe next week's a little bit more important, there's no doubt. As much as they would have loved to have beaten the Eagles yesterday, the truth is their much more important game was going to be this week against the Ravens, because if they win this one, they can lock up the division. So we'll see what that means for George Pickens. But the thought of Brandon Stevens being out one-on-one against George Pickens and Russell Wilson just putting the ball out there concerns you. There's no doubt about that. But not all penalties are made equal. Also, obviously, the Ravens' offensive line did the job yesterday. But as we talked about last week, given what they were up against and given how many pieces were missing for the Giants, as was alluded to on the broadcast yesterday, I don't know that it suddenly makes you say, What were we so worried about? I think that's still a big concern for me going into next week in a matchup against the Steelers. Lamar Jackson most every week doesn't concern me. Lamar Jackson's the reason why the Ravens have a chance. And I'll still say that, but I acknowledge that the two worst passer ratings that Lamar Jackson has had in the last 2 years have both been against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, the one last year, that's an anomaly because it was a day where all of his receivers decided to drop the ball in unison, and that leads to more incompletions and it leads to a lower passer rating. But the one a couple weeks ago was not. That was just the job the Steelers did against him. The story of yesterday was they checked the box. And now what comes into focus is, once again, the most important regular season game of the Lamar Jackson era. I don't know what's going on over there. And it doesn't, it's funny because as you do the math says maybe it's not really all that important. The Ravens can be eliminated on a Saturday. They can't even move into first place on Saturday. Even if they win the game, the Steelers still control their own destiny. So you could win this game and yet win both of the games the rest of the way and still end up being the 5 seed in the playoffs and going on the road. So how important really is this game? It really is only about avoiding elimination. Because there is still, obviously, the chance that the Steelers turn around and lose to the Chiefs. By the way, if the Ravens do win this game, y'all are going to have to be Bills fans next Sunday. You can't have the Bills slipping up and allowing the Chiefs to clinch ahead of their game against the Steelers on Christmas because you need the Chiefs to care.
Well, if Patrick Mahomes is even...
We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. Yeah, obviously, he's dealing with an ankle thing. But you need... Now, again, if by the way, if the Chiefs were to have no Patrick Mahomes and lose next week, if it's one thing where he misses a game, then they would really care about the game the following week because they've got a lot to do. The point being, you just need that game to matter, and yes, to your point, you need Patrick Mahomes playing in that game. But the Ravens need to take care of their own business because if they beat the Steelers and then turn around and lose to the Texans on the road, then none of it matters. The game tangibly, it doesn't mean a ton. Again, it's just about avoiding elimination. That's what the game, this actual one-off, if you only look at this game, the only thing it really means is avoiding elimination in the AFC North race. But let's say you get eliminated in the AFC North race. You're still going to the playoffs. You're playing on the first weekend of the playoffs no matter what. The only difference is, does your road to the Super Bowl include 2 or 3 road games? And again, even if you win, it could still be 3. It means tangibly only a little. But spiritually, it means everything. And Marlon Humphrey in particular was the one who voiced it after the last Steelers game. This is the season because it feels like there's a weight that is 1 billion pounds that is being carried on the shoulders of these players where it's like, dude, what the hell is going on here? And the last time this happened, we spent a week talking about how it had been largely an anomaly, that 7 out of 8 had been won by the Steelers, right? But there was COVID, and there was Lamar not playing because the Ravens had clinched, and there was we're going over the list of bizarre-ass reasons why the Ravens had lost 7 of 8 to the Steelers and why it wasn't really a reflection of where the two organizations stood. And then the last one was a sucker punch. And you could say, well, the last one was about the fact that your kicker couldn't make a kick. Right, but your kicker can't make kicks. That's not an anomaly. That's
what the team is.
Part of the furniture this season. That's a feature, not a bug, unfortunately. Now, I hope that's changing. It was weird. I brought that up on game day yesterday, and Rita was like, dude, I was actually, miffed that the Ravens didn't try any field goals yesterday. And I get it. Does it really make a difference? If Justin Tucker had lined up and kicked a 47-yarder yesterday, would it have anything to do with whether or not he was going to make a kick next week if the game's on the line against the Steelers? Not at all. Not at all. But for our own edification, just for it would have been nice to see it. This is the Tommy Boy thing. This is you want to guarantee on the box. You don't want money on the table and your daughter's missing. You get a good look at your butcher by sticking your head up his ass. It's that thing. That's what we're dealing with here. But it's got to be your bull. That's where we are. It would have been nice. I don't know what my butcher looks like. We'll find that out. Or maybe not. Maybe they just don't have to maybe they just score touchdowns the rest of the season. And we don't have to think about it the rest of the way. I'm not opposed to that. But spiritually, this weighs on the fan base significantly. Significantly weighs on us. It's why, when we see the odds for this week and we see the Ravens are kind of notable favorites over the Steelers.
What's it at right now?
On Saturday, it was close to a touchdown.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. Now, admittedly, I don't know how much of that was related to T.J. Watt.
The last report I saw was Fowler yesterday said the Steelers are hopeful that Pickens plays Saturday against the Ravens. So,
well, if the news is trending well for Pickens and Watt, then the Ravens, and it's still 6.5. The Ravens are still 6.5 point favorites. None of us in this city are going to. We're going to stay the hell. At best, we're going to stay the hell away from it. If not outright. Bet the other way. We might be putting American dollars on the other side of this because it is nuts if they have Watt and Pickens that the number is 6.5. Even if they don't have Watt and Pickens, we'd be like, 6.5? Really? Really? Yeah.
Got a kicker that can make kicks. So it's,
yeah, he's good. Yep. He's very good. The one here, not so much. Not so much. But that spiritual feeling that we have is, no, this is a mess. So for the fan base, it weighs heavily. But again, you saw it come out after the last game, and you heard it from players. How many guys have talked about, I'm not a real Raven yet? How many guys have arrived in the last 2 seasons? And it grows, right? Add Desmond King to the list of not a real Raven. The number just keeps getting bigger. There are so many players on this team that would now say, I'm not a real Raven. Because they've never beaten the Steelers. And that sits with them. That's a thing. They talk about it. They recognize it. Whatever that looks like this week, however they handle it publicly, they can't, I'm telling you, This is not them presenting a unified front. This is them presenting a unified front. If they go out this week and say, we don't think about it, it's not a thing for us, they are lying. And that's fine. I get that they also don't want to obsess over it this week. Because it seemed like that was part of the story and how tightly they were wound up by it the last time they played. But make no mistake, it's a thing for this franchise. It's a thing for this organization. It's a thing for this locker room. It weighs on them heavily. Maybe they can win a Super Bowl without having to beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. It seems very unlikely they can win a Super Bowl without having to beat the Steelers or the Texans. Doing that math of how they could they fall to the 7 seed and somehow play the Bills in round 1, beat the Bills, and then somebody upsets whoever that would be, the Chargers beat the Steelers, and so it's then you're playing. I guess it's possible that you could win a Super Bowl, and certainly if you're the 5 seed, if you beat the Texans, but then you got to play the Chiefs. It seems like you're going to have to play one of these teams at least. That's been your quote-unquote kryptonite. At least one of them. More likely, the path would include both. Although I guess if you're the 5, it's totally plausible that the Steelers lose to the Bills or something like that, so you never have to play the Steelers. But still, You have to overcome these things. This conversation has to end. And by the way, it wouldn't even really end because it would still be, even if you win on Saturday, somebody would remind you, if you face them again in the playoffs, the Steelers are 8-2 in their last 10 games against the Ravens. But at least the last one would be it wouldn't be the one, it would be the second. It would be the two. This, despite not tangibly meaning a lot, means everything. You gotta get over this hump. You want to prove you can win a Super Bowl? You gotta start with the smaller mountains to climb. Like, how are you gonna climb Kilimanjaro if you can't climb Mount Washington?
You have to call Haloti Ngata back, I guess.
That's true. Yeah. Well, apparently, I hear a rumor he's going to be at the game on Saturday.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, maybe,
so
maybe he can.
They know. So they know you're.
Maybe, I don't know.
They get your analogy.
I don't know. But it's that big of a game. It's that significant on Saturday. It cannot be understated, despite the fact that, again, it's going to be wildly overstated. It's this dichotomy of man situation. It's both a not all that really significant game and the most significant game equally at the same time, just depending on what prism you look at it through. But that's the story, and that'll be what my column is about today at PressBoxOnline.com, and it'll be what the conversation is about today, which doesn't mean that it won't come up. It's not like we're not going to talk about yesterday. We're going to do pats on the ass later today. We'll, I guess, tomorrow try to do 5 plays. I have no earthly idea how that will be possible. It's one of those days where
all 5 plays on the first scoring drive.
Maybe. I don't know. It just didn't feel like it was very competitive after that point, but we'll do our best. I can't come up with one right now. I can't tell you one. I guess maybe I would say like the first touchdown to Rashad Bateman. I don't know. Whatever, man.
Stiff arm from Lamar.
Yeah, it was fun.
Didn't really even matter.
But did it tell the story? I don't know.
Yeah, it did.
Okay, sure, if you say so. Because it was neat. We like neat plays.
Opting the punt on 4th and 1. That's.
I mean, sure. That's there could be a conversation. They're like, God, no one has ever said Tommy DeVito sucks louder than the Ravens punting on 4th and 1 for the first time all season. Wow, the Ravens are punting on 4th and 1. John Harbaugh might as well have yelled to the broadcast booth because Tommy DeVito sucks.
No, he's too nice. He wouldn't say that.
I know he would. Well, I don't know if he's too nice, but I know he wouldn't. He knows better than to say that out loud. Still, that's what he was saying out loud in that moment. He was telling you Tommy DeVito sucks. That's the reason why they decided to punt in that moment. But we'll do that. We'll talk to Andrew Catalon here in a few minutes. But obviously, the rest of the week, the focus will be on what's coming. The focus will be on the Steelers and the significance of this game and a Ravens team that has faced a lot of doubts this season that can go a long way. I think within this fan base, it is hard to get the majority of people to really buy into the Ravens as, like, this is a team that can win the Super Bowl right now. They win on Saturday, I think a lot of that opinion changes. I think all of a sudden it's, okay, giddy up. Giddy up. Let's see. That becomes a conversation that I think is back in play based on the result of Saturday's game. And that's, again, not really fair because it's just one game, but it's a spiritual issue that everyone's dealing with, including the football team. So that'll be the tone. That'll be the tone all week here on GCR. All right. Today's show is brought to you by, this one will be brought to you by the CIAA tournament, which is back in Baltimore. CIAA tournament returns to CFG Bank Arena downtown. We're really excited about that, and they're excited to offer you $10 off single-session general admission tickets by using the promo code HOLIDAY. You go right now to CIAAtournament.org and use that promo code HOLIDAY, and you can take $10 off all of your single-session general admission tickets for the CIAA tournament. That offer doesn't last forever. In fact, only one more week. So if you've been thinking about it, if you've been saying, I've been meaning to check it out, this is the good news. You don't have to commit to a date. You don't have to commit to a game. Just, even if you've considered, hey, I've never been before, I'd like for this to be the year that I go see what this is all about, why it is that a Division II basketball tournament gets so much attention, and why people care about it so much, then let's do it. Let's go right now. CIAAtournament.org. Use that code HOLIDAY when you purchase your tickets, and you get $10 off single-session general admission tickets for the CIAA tournament coming up in late February and early March at the CFG Bank Arena. Andrew Catalon, yes?
Quick program. Actually, on the other side, we will talk with Mike Golic Jr.
Oh, Mike Golic Jr. is going to join
Catalon
us.
said he's cool with getting bumped by Golic. So.
I mean, you're not going to start like a whole thing.
No. Yeah, he said he's cool.
All right, very good. Mike Golic Jr. is going to join us from the GoJo Show. We'll do that next. It's Glenn Clark Radio.
The top high school basketball talent from across the country returns to the Wycomico Civic Center December 26th through 30th for the Governor's Challenge presented by Pohanka of Salisbury. Witness 5 full days of elite competition featuring over 140 high school basketball teams from 16 states plus Canada. Multiple top 10 teams and nationally ranked players will display their talents on the court. Don't miss the best experience in high school hoops. For tickets and info, visit govchallenge.org.
Hey Baltimore, it's number 10, Arthur Millette, and I'm hoping you'll slot us in all season long for the Arthur Millette Show. We will be traveling around the region all season, giving you the chance to get to know me and my teammates. There will be some football talk and a lot more. You can watch this show live on Pressbox's Facebook and YouTube pages and listen every Friday night on 105.7 The Fan. Find out more at pressboxonline.com/Millette. The Arthur Millette Show, the only show in town that's a work of art.
Whether your focus is luxury and comfort, convenience and technologically advanced connectivity, or sporty performance and aggressive styling, we've got the perfect Highlander for you. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Highlanders from your local Toyota dealer today.
The ultimate fan experience awaits you at Sports and Social Maryland. See how we're raising the sports bar with our massive 100-foot media wall featuring 40 HD TVs and a 47-foot big screen. Bet on your favorite teams and this year's biggest events at the FanDuel Sportsbook while enjoying your favorite beers and cocktails, plus our delicious takes on bar food classics. Visit Sports and Social at Live Casino and Hotel Maryland at Arundel Mills. Must be 21. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
The drug scene in Maryland is changing. Fentanyl and xylazine are being added to street drugs, and you may not even know it. Xylazine is not even intended for humans, and fentanyl is an opioid 50 times stronger than heroin, and contributed to over 80% of overdose deaths in our state. Anyone who uses drugs, even occasionally, is at risk of overdose. To learn more, visit stopoverdose.maryland.gov or call or text 988.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution, and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
Driving in Maryland? Did you know an Easy Pass from DriveEasyMD.com can save you time and money? Of course you did, because you are a thrifty driver. An antenna reads your Easy Pass transponder and automatically deducts the toll from your Easy Pass account. There, you just saved money with Easy Pass, all without slowing or receiving a notice in the mail. Well done, thrifty driver, well done. Get your Easy Pass at DriveEasyMD.com.
Visit Harford County this holiday season for a brand new event. You'll feel like you stepped into a holiday movie. Harford Holidays is overflowing with the spirit of the holiday season. You'll be amazed by the jaw-dropping light displays, thrilled by a visit to Santa's workshop, and have the holiday time of your life with sleigh rides, a special vendor village, s'mores making stations, and so much more. It's a holiday light experience, new at Ripken Stadium, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, December November 6th through December 22nd. For ticket information, head to visithartford.com. You'll have the happiest holiday season ever.
Contrary to what some people believe, I actually like this guy when he sleeps. Glenn Clark, talking sports.
All right, back in here on GCR, into basketball season at the high school level, and everything that you need to know. Who plays for who? What's going on early on? Of course, we're getting ready for the Governor's Challenge here in just a few days. That gets underway. Everything that you want to know about basketball and all other winter sports at the high school level can be found by going to countysports.zone. That's countysports.zone, proudly sponsored by your local Toyota dealer, and buyatoyota.com, countysports.zone, for everything you could possibly need to know related to high school sports here in the state of Maryland. Ravens, the schedule will be a little bit off this week. John Harbaugh, I believe, is still doing a press conference today, but then like Wednesday becomes Tuesday, the whole thing. The week will just be a little bit different as they get ready for the Saturday games so that we can make way for the dumbest idea in football history of playing 2 Wednesday games next week, which is awesome. Our plans as of right now are just we're not working Christmas Eve or Christmas. We don't care that we're going to do one big bunched up Monday show reacting to the Steelers and getting – are we doing the drinking show?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I did forget to say that. Yes, everyone should be
everyone. Who's
so.
Jeremy's
Jeremy's
in.
Dennis Shaka is.
Oh, the great Dennis Shaka's going to come and play some music.
John Proctor, obviously everything hinged on him.
Is doing a quiz.
Yes.
Check in with Tim. Tim came in last year. Tim's coming in this year.
He may not be able to stay for like the entire time, but yeah, Tim will definitely be able to swing by.
Well, what is the entire time? We don't really know what that is.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah. I mean, he's got
we'll figure
he's got other obligations as well.
What, his show? Stupid. He doesn't need to do that. He's fine. They'll be fine over there. Plus, he's getting hammered, so it won't be a problem. Nice. Oh, you know he's going to be like, I got to ease up. Oh, come on. All right, we'll be doing a drinking show next Monday, so please don't lose this game, Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, it'll certainly be something.
God, it'll be a very different tenor to the drinking show if the Ravens lose. And then for picks, we're just going to do like an online-only version of the 2 Christmas games next week. And then we'll do the rest of the picks on Thursday for the weekend games. So, look, there's no way of getting around it. It sucks. This is, again, it's not our fault. It's the stupid NFL's fault for playing Wednesday games. It's nothing we can do about it. And
unless these games end up being, 2 of the best games of the history of football.
Yeah, they shouldn't happen on Wednesday. I'm not going to back off of that. There's no reason they couldn't play
Beyonce halftime show.
Nobody's going to work on Thursday. They could just play these games on Thursday afternoon. It'd be fine. Well, we're going to go to work on Thursday.
If they were playing on Thursday, would we?
If they were playing on Thursday, we'd come in, do our show Thursday morning, and then we do the show in the morning. Yeah, if it was an afternoon show, then no, we wouldn't. But if they played this game at 4 o'clock on Thursday, everybody would be good. And I think there still is a Thursday night game next week, right?
Yeah. I don't forget who it is.
The hell is it? And this is so stupid. It's so nonsense. Anyway, the moral of the story being, we always take Christmas Eve and Christmas Day off. Part of it is because I just need to help my wife prepare. We host my family on Christmas Eve. I got to be able to help out with the last-minute stuff. So that's going to be the plan again, despite the fact. And then also on Monday, we'll make the drinking show kind of an open house for people that have asked about bringing in donations for Helping Up Mission. Monday, the doors will be open. And I'll put some more details out about that throughout the course of the week. And if you would like to bring some stuff by, then we'll do that. And hopefully we'll have one other gathering place for you to make donations for Helping Up Mission as well. So looking forward to all of that. All right. Now, let's continue to talk about the Ravens, their big win yesterday, and obviously a massive game coming up this week. Our next guest, he, of course, is the man that you know from the GoJo and Golic show. He is, I believe, like the Grand Marshal of the Pop-Tarts Bowl. He is Mr. Mike Golic Jr., and he's with us now here on GCR. Mike, it's Glenn. Happy holidays, brother. Thank you for taking the time, as always.
No, appreciate you bringing me on. Appreciate the illustrious introduction as we all get to celebrate the Pop-Tarts Bowl innovating in bowl season now. What a beautiful thing.
Can I handle one thing with you, right? I know that you've got a relationship with them, and you have become the preeminent voice in the Pop-Tarts community, and I think that's probably an honor that means more to you than anything else that you've accomplished. I'm still not over what they did last year. I'm not allowing them to just be let off the hook for announcing they had an edible mascot only to have a cake. I'm never going to be okay with it. I think the trophy's cool. In fact, if the trophy is so much cooler than that escapade was. I just think in this country we should have standards and things that we believe in, and we can't just gaslight everyone and say we have an edible mascot when all we have is a cake. The cake, I'm sure, was delicious and wonderful, and everyone enjoyed it, but it was a cake. It was not an edible mascot, and I just think that some things should matter in this country, Mike.
I admire your passion. I understand and appreciate the place that it comes from in here. And listen, I'm with you. Not to go back and relitigate all of this, but I and you and a lot of America were led to believe, and maybe this is more a sickness on our part, that we really expected Pop-Tart to craft a mascot that would be able to be eaten live, and that players would actually display an interest in that. But maybe, you know what, at this point, I'd say this. This gives me hope. What we're seeing this year and the fact that they are now spending money on technology in order to improve the Pop-Tart Bowl product gives me hope that one actually be able to engineer an actual edible mascot to make up for that wrong.
You know what? Now you might have just got me back on board. What you just did right there might have pulled it off. Mike, obviously there's not a ton. I know you were tweeting a little bit. Was your the tweet that you sent yesterday, the Baltimore WYD, was that in reaction to them not going for it on 4th and 1 early on in the game?
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised by that. That's one of those spots where we normally hear the anecdote after the game, right? That, oh, you know what, John Harbaugh's like, I went up and talked to Lamar and he said to go for it here. Or at the very least, on the other side, the thing that was most surprising to me and maybe indicative of just what the game plan was for Baltimore was the fact that Lamar Jackson didn't really protest too much. Usually we see him, he's a fiery, animated guy when he believes they should be going out there and doing something or executing better or a different way. And Lamar Jackson sort of took that one and walked over to the sideline like nothing was wrong. And so I understand, hey, this Giants team, especially, going from Tommy DeVito to Tim Boyle during the course of this game, was never going to threaten you offensively. And so the only chance they were going to have would be one that Baltimore handed to them on a silver platter in this game. And so maybe that's why you play it the way you do. But I was just a little stunned given the history of player and coach in that spot.
So it did seem like they were kind of as loudly as they possibly could, but without saying it directly, just saying, dude, Tommy DeVito stinks. Like, what are we doing here? We're not going to do it. But I was also caught off guard. I mean, it's literally the first time all season they haven't gone for it on 4th and 1. And I don't think it's a reflection of them changing their thought process, because I think that's what a little bit of conversation could come out to after the bye, like, hey, maybe they're saying this is not who we're going to be. We're not going to be reckless anymore. I don't think that's the case. It just really did feel like they were telling you we don't respect our opponent today, and the only thing that we could possibly do is somehow screw this up and let them have some life in a day where they're not likely to have any life anyway.
Yeah, that's basically my main takeaway, because to your point, too, we know the Baltimore Ravens, in addition to being a dude's rock team where, hey, you've got a great quarterback, you've got Derrick Henry at running back, of course you're going to go out there and take a yard. Baltimore, the Lions, they're not afraid of a yard when it comes to winning a game, but the Baltimore Ravens also one of the more analytically inclined teams in the NFL. Their department does a phenomenal job in trying to help John Harbaugh and company have an edge in the way that they approach in-game situations. And so I have no doubt, to your point, that this is something opponent-specific. This is something that they thought about in the lead-up to this. They've earned that level of respect and credibility in how they go about their decision-making at this point.
Mike, it's funny because you just used the comparison to Dan Campbell. What do you make of how the country is, kind of going war on Dan Campbell? I want to get back to the Ravens, I promise. But, I know it was nuts. I can't possibly fathom the decision yesterday to try an onside kick with that much time left in the game. I get it. The Bills were moving the ball significantly. But, has Dan Campbell lost it? Should we be criticizing him the way that we all are for that yesterday?
Listen, I think it's like anything else, right? We too often conflate criticism with a criticism of the person. And at this point, we all know Dan Campbell's MO. We know he is going to play incredibly aggressive football that his team, by the way, is used to, subscribes to, has practiced for, and has earned the right to go out and execute. So all that's in line, and we know that Dan Campbell in general has had his head in the right place with a lot of this stuff. He made a decision yesterday that I can't really defend. And I think it's okay to say, hey, the guy made a bad decision in a game that we probably were still going to ultimately lose. And because of the changes in the rules around onside kicks, really doesn't afford you the same opportunity as it might have back in the day if we were still dealing with, hey, you could go surprise onside in that spot. You could do something to sway the balance there. Most of Dan Campbell's aggressive decisions, like the ones that we talked about with Baltimore, have better math on their side. 4th and 1, going for 2 in certain spots. Those kind of aggressive chips in the middle of the table thing have good backing to them. The onside kick's like an 8% success rate at this point. It's hard to really justify that. So bad decision doesn't ultimately make him a bad decision maker overall, though.
But the irony being that their next onside kick was actually like really dope and nearly did work. Like, if you're going to do it, why the hell didn't you pull that one out? Because that one had a great...
If you're going to do the onside kick, simply do the good one every time. Should be the coaching point.
No doubt about it. All right, Mike Golic Jr. is with us here on GCR. Back to the Ravens. I don't know that we can learn a ton from yesterday's game. Lamar Jackson was really good. Well, Lamar Jackson is really good. The Giants aren't very good. It's sort of what it is, although to be fair, the Ravens had lost games to teams that weren't very good this season, so it was good that they did it. Everything seems to come down to, can you get a sense of, I'm trying to explain, tangibly, the Ravens could beat the Steelers this week and still win all their games and lose the division. Even if they win this game, they don't control their own destiny for the division. But my God, given what's happened, given that the Steelers have won 8 of their last 9, given the way that I've heard these guys talk about the Steelers and the frustration they vented, it just feels like even if this tangibly doesn't mean everything, spiritually, this means everything. And like any path to getting yourself going and winning a Super Bowl this season really feels like it has to start by checking this box and getting over this damn hump already.
No, I'm with you. I think, we all kind of spend a lot of time spinning the wheels on just how much meaning to assign to some of the mental hurdles that exist. But I can tell you, again, playing experience in the college level, not the NFL level, that's a very real thing to all of a sudden be in a critical moment in a game against an opponent that you've got history with and get that here we go again feeling that can sometimes in a critical situation be the difference between winning and losing football, and being able to get that confidence, not only for all the reasons that you mentioned logistically, but just in general to build that confidence going into the postseason where we know Baltimore's got some scorned history in the Lamar Jackson era, I do think is critical. And so, yes, being able to go out here and execute first and foremost against a quality opponent, against the defense that we know has plenty of bite to it, against a coach in Mike Tomlin that's going to go out there and give them an advantage every single time they step out on the field. All that's important, but the mental side that you mentioned absolutely is a factor for anyone that's ever played.
What do you make of it, Mike? Like, why have the Steelers? You're absolutely right about Mike Tomlin, but Lamar Jackson's 1-4 against the Steelers. He's obviously been incredibly good against everybody else, I guess, except the Chiefs, and there's maybe some similar symmetry there. What do you make of why this has continued to linger? This issue that the Ravens have had with the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, well, I think one, again, coaching, like Mike Tomlin deserves a lot of credit for all this. And this is a year where Mike Tomlin's kind of gotten to turn his nose up at the rest of us for doubting him earlier in the season. He hit all the right buttons in the quarterback change stuff. But in general, he is someone that kind of that old Patriots mantra of we're going to just give you enough opportunities to beat yourself, mistake, and we're going to avoid it more often than not. And so I think that's certainly a factor. And the other is good players. Like when you've got a game wrecker on defense like TJ Watt and a group in general up front that's been healthier and very potent on the edges, that gives you a chance against anyone, but especially against a quarterback as talented as Lamar. You got to cut off the head of the snake first and foremost. And they're so deep at edge rusher and have such a high impact player in TJ that having that as the consistent backdrop to a lot of these games, I think does go a long way. And just, hey, the right personnel matchup in here. So much of the NFL is week-to-week basis styles make fights, and the Pittsburgh Steelers just happen to have a style that, like we all know for most divisions, is, hey, we need to worry about beating our division first. And when you play in the AFC North specifically, as tough as this division is, building your team that way in the offseason is usually the right way to go.
No, that's fair. And look, we thought that was exactly what the Ravens were trying to do by going out and getting Derrick Henry, is be prepared for this type of game. We'll see if this can be the game where that can be the difference maker for the Ravens. Mike, the penalty thing, like it's been almost a disaster for the Ravens this season. And again, even in a blowout win yesterday, they're over 100 yards in penalties. And I acknowledge that not all penalties are made equal, and some are crimes of aggression, and you can kind of live with them, and some of them are really questionable calls. But I don't think this team has earned the benefit of the doubt when it comes to penalties. We keep saying all season long, well, hey, they got to fix this, but it's week 16. Like, you kind of are who you are at this point. Can a team accomplish these big picture goals while continuing to be penalized like this week in and week out?
You can, but you just make it unnecessarily harder on yourself. Football is rife with statistics that show the effect of drive-killing penalties, how, a holding penalty in the wrong spot can lead to, the drop-off in points per drive and all the things like that. So, yeah, you can absolutely do it. The Ravens, that's the thing. They're talented enough to do almost anything in front of them. This roster, we know, has so many great players on it, led by the quarterback, but on and on down the list. They've got enough talent to do it. But when you're trying to win in the margins against, when we talk about the postseason, teams like the Buffalo Bills that look like the war machine is fully up and running now, at least on offense. A team like the Kansas City Chiefs that, despite all the bad things that we know are happening to them right now, still win a ton of games and still manage to get to the postseason, and whether it's K-Voodoo or anything else, always manage to work through these situations here in time. You're always winning in the margins. And so to have that as the albatross hanging around your neck is certainly not something that I'd want for this team trying to go in here and get some of the postseason demons exercise.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point, and we will see how it plays out in these last 3 weeks, but it really seems like a storyline. Mike, who do you is the team right now to beat in the AFC?
Buffalo. I think that team, and I've said it all year long, they can make football remarkably simple. Now, defensively, they've had to change a lot. Injury has also affected that team, and we've seen them give up a ton of points in the last couple of weeks to Detroit this week, the week before, and after seeing the Rams, offensively stunted performance in division on Thursday night, while there are plenty of things, the short week, the division familiarity that can somewhat explain that away, it's still a massive swing, and some of that tilts towards Buffalo's defense needing to go out here and perform better. But offensively, they have one of the better offensive lines in the conference. The quarterback's playing at an incredible level, offsetting the loss of Steph Diggs that they endured this offseason, willingly walked into, knowing that Josh Allen could be the difference maker at this point in his career. And so I just think where it sits right now, they're a team that has, an offense that's firing on all cylinders and a defense that we've seen at times be able to hold up here, but as of late has struggled a bit.
I know everything that you're saying. I still feel like I keep – and obviously if that's the case, then Ravens fans would say, well, hey, when the Ravens played the Bills, they throttled them. So, maybe that's good news. But I just keep defaulting back to until you beat the Chiefs in the playoffs, I don't know. Maybe I've seen this movie too many times, and we'll see what's going on with Patrick Mahomes, and that makes a different. It obviously is significant in the story, but I just feel like we have to still default to the Chiefs until you actually do it, in the AFC Championship game, because it just feels like it's almost the definition of insanity continuing to expect a different result.
It is. This Kansas City team, I'm not ready to fully put this on them yet, but it does feel like a little bit like 2023 Philadelphia Eagles, where I get they've been winning games, but this does not feel like sustainable football. No one can watch the Chiefs on offense right now and say this looks good. Even yesterday in the game where they finally won by double digits, it's because the Browns had 6 turnovers on the day. I mean, the Chiefs offensively still struggling for anything consistent in the passing game. And now you've got Joe Tooney kicked out at left tackle. You've been so inept at trying to find someone to go play at that position that you've got your all-pro guard out there in a way that makes his life tougher and makes him a lesser player because he's in a position he's not supposed to be in. And then now you've got a backup guard working in there. So that position just got worse. So 2 positions on the line. Now, you could argue it was, left tackle maybe didn't get worse because they've struggled so much at that position, but left guard got worse for the Kansas City Chiefs. So that interior that's been the sell for this team is now compromised going forward. And again, what happened with Patrick Mahomes this week felt unfortunately inevitable given how much he had been hit because of the weaknesses on the edge of that line. And so I just have concerns that this isn't just, he took one bad hit. It's no, they've been letting him get hit far too often, and I don't see the signs of that slowing down anytime soon.
I understand that. I understand what you're saying. I'll add in one other thought, too, which is just is there anything where you say this is similar to what the Ravens went through a year ago, where the Ravens look like world beaters late in the season, but it's just a different animal, that it's just Until you've done it, you have to prove that you can do it. Does that make sense?
Oh, listen, I do think there's something, and this is a little bit of what we talked about before with getting over the hump mentally. The Kansas City Chiefs, and the reason they've been able to win all these games is because they're comfortable in moments that make everyone else uncomfortable, and that's because of the benefit of experience. To your point, they know what it takes to prepare themselves to go through all these different rounds of the postseason. They're not worried about being down in a spot or a difficult third down or a red zone trip that might make someone who's there for the first or second time all of a sudden spike their heart rate a bit. They've got that cool under pressure that no doubt is a weapon when it comes time to the postseason, but that's usually dealing from a different baseline. And again, I'd say the one time we really saw this Chiefs team spit the bit on the big stage was the Super Bowl against Tampa when the offensive line was too beat up to party. And this group, unfortunately, at least on the edges, feels way too similar for me to feel comfortable.
All right. Before I let you go, I'll just have the conversation. It seems like everybody has accepted that the MVP race is slammed shut. It's just Josh Allen. Ironically, Lamar Jackson largely has better numbers than Josh Allen does this season. I know this is a narrative-driven thing, and it just sort of tends to be a horse race, and that's where we are at in the horse race. But is it to you slam shut that Josh Allen is the MVP of the league this season?
No, I don't think anything's slammed shut, but I do feel one can appreciate an MVP that's not simply just driven by statistical analysis. It would be the Baltimore Ravens and their fans, right? Lamar Jackson last year, this is the same thing as everyone saying, well, statistically, he's not the best at X, Y, or Z. But anyone that watched the Ravens last year is like, oh, yeah, that guy's insane right now, especially post-Rams game. And for Josh Allen, I think a lot of that's very similar this year where, hey, there's still great stats, but Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals retained two of the best receivers in the sport, tagging T. Higgins to keep him there with Jamar Chase. The Ravens went out and added Derrick Henry to the backfield here. And the Bills said, well, the guy that's been our leading receiver for the last 4 or 5 years walk and believe you're the one that's able to offset it. And he's largely delivered on that. Couple that with what he's seen the last couple of games, and it's really hard to look away from what Josh has done and say that it's not deserving.
I get it. I completely get it. That tends to be the way that it works. It does still feel like, hey, there's 3 weeks left. Maybe we let him play out, and then we'll do it from there.
Sure. And to be clear, I think Lamar has the best chance of pushing him down the stretch, better than Saquon, what the quarterbacks are able to do.
All right. Mike Golic Jr., what can I plug for you, my friend?
GoJo and Golic Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the Draftkings Network. And heading out this weekend, I'll be at Penn State SMU doing some pregame stuff with Bleacher Report. Me and Dad getting everyone ready for the college football playoff out there in Happy Valley.
Very cool. Very cool. They have players going into the transfer portal despite the fact that they're still alive for a national championship, which is, oh, boy, is that wild, Mike. That doesn't seem like that should be the case. At Mike Golic Jr. is how you follow him. Love you, brother. Always appreciate you. Thank you for taking the time for us this morning, man. Happy holidays to you, sir.
Happy holidays. Have a great week. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, buddy. Mike Golic Jr. with us here on GCR. Yeah, that story is nuts. And I get it. Like, this is the way that it works. Apparently, Drew Aller told Penn State that he's coming back next year. That just came out, and that, I'm sure, factored into this decision. Is it Pribula? I apologize. I'm not a Penn State fan, so I don't.
You're not a Penn State fan?
Yeah, believe it or not, I haven't been like a closet Penn State guy over the years. But he actually plays. They use him. He's kind of like what Billy Edwards was a year ago. Not exactly, not like every running situation, but he has a role for that team. But he recognizes he's not going to be the quarterback next year, so he wants to be somewhere where he can play. I get it, and in this landscape, that's the way it works. The problem being his team is trying to win a national championship. And look, I get it. We're all going to roll our eyes at that and say they don't have a chance in hell. But as has been pointed out, seeding-wise, they were done a big favor. And from a seeding standpoint, they shape up to have an easier path than even Oregon, although they have to play one more game. Just opponent-wise, they would face lesser opponents. And so a lot of people would tell you they're going to be favored to at least reach the semifinals. And here they have a contributor to that going into the transfer portal while the team is getting ready for their biggest games. And whatever you feel about any of it, that doesn't seem great. It seems like it shouldn't be that way. And the answer that everybody seems to think is, well, that's why you got to back up the transfer portal. But this is the problem with having a lot of teams whose seasons are done, and then players are still going to outright, like, hey, I know I'm going into the transfer portal, so I don't want to get hurt in a bowl game. It's a tough spot for everybody, but definitely not good for the sport when you're trying to sell that these are the most important games, and yet players are just choosing not to participate in them. That is not a good look. All right, hour number 1 of today's show is in the books. Griffin, it was brought to you by Live Casino and Hotel.
That's right, and the Baltimore's football team is back home this weekend on Saturday.
Both back home.
They are both back home. Both Baltimore and Washington are both home this weekend, and that means you have a chance to win $7 in free slot play at Live Casino because every time they score touchdowns during home games, Live Rewards members are getting $7 in free slots. You have to have your Live Rewards card inserted into the slot machine, any slot machine on the floor, and be actively playing. But once those touchdowns score, you get your prize. $7 in free slot play. Again, have to have the Live Rewards card inserted correctly. At Rono Mills, must be 21. Please play responsibly. For help, visit mdgamblinghelp.org or call 1-800-GAMBLER.
All right, into hour number 2 of the program. Hey, on last Friday's show, you heard a segment that Stan and I did where I posed to him a question that Jacob Calvin Meyer had asked as he had shared out a column he wrote about where the Orioles find themselves after the winter meetings. He asked a question about whether or not Mike Elias has earned the benefit of the doubt. And I saw the way a lot of you reacted to that question, but I thought it was provoking, and I wanted to give a little bit of a moment here with Jacob Calvin Meyer to talk about it. So joining us now, he covers the Orioles for the Baltimore Sun. He is the aforementioned Jacob Calvin Meyer. Jacob, it's Glenn. Good morning. Thank you, as always, taking the time. Really appreciate it, man.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Jacob, it's interesting because within the column that you wrote, there's no doubt that, like, if anybody is judging the winter meeting specifically and suggesting that means definitively this is who the team is, there's no that's nonsense, right? Like, and it's being, you're a slave to the moment, and it's reactionary, and it's way over the top. Yet, I do still struggle with, but is there, do we know that there's a definitive plan versus, hey, if things work out? Like, that's the part that I come back to, is I understand why you want to see the aggression specifically related to pitchers, because then at least backs up the idea that, hey, they know what it's going to cost. They know it. If it doesn't get done the first week, all good, but we know that is a priority, and it feels like we didn't really see that. Like, they weren't even really being tied to any of the top pitchers that were available last week.
Yeah, so ton of thoughts on this topic. The main one that I want to touch on really quick is kind of the benefit of the doubt verbiage that I used in my tweet that got a lot of people going, right? So I don't think any fan base should give any general manager a carte blanche benefit of the doubt, period, point blank, forever. That's not what I was saying. What I was saying was because right now it looks like the Orioles aren't going to sign a top-tier starting pitcher and that they're going to have to trade for one, okay? Because I think most people look at it and say, okay, Corbin Burns is going to sign for $240 million, either the Blue Jays or the Giants. I know there's been some talk about Jack Flaherty coming back to the Orioles. That would shock me. And then some of the other guys have that draft pick tied to them, and they're not even number one starters at that point. So I think I'm looking at it and saying, okay, there's about 10 to 12 guys who are on the trade market. And the Orioles, I think the Orioles are going to trade for one, or if they want a top-tier starting pitcher, they're going to have to trade for one. And I remember last offseason, which wasn't long ago, when a lot of us, including myself, said all offseason that the Orioles were not going to trade for a starting pitcher. I didn't think they were going to trade for Corbin Burns, and that ended up being wrong. And now I understand that Kyle Bradish got hurt in January, and that might have changed some plans. But at the end of the day, all we know is that 10 months ago, Mike Elias traded for Corbin Burns. And so in this specific topic, or this specific lens that I was talking about in my tweet and what I wrote for the Baltimore Sun, is that when it comes to trading for starting pitching, Mike Elias has clearly showed that he is willing to part ways with prospects to go out and get starting pitching. It hasn't always worked out because obviously we have the
Trevor Rogers, right?
We have the Trevor Rogers trade, which, you know, that isn't over yet. There's still a couple years left. It's not what they needed last season, obviously. But the two before that, for Zach Eflin and Corbin Burnes, clearly worked out. And so when it comes to just this specific narrow topic, yeah, I'm going to wait until the end of the offseason before declaring that Mike Elias isn't willing to win as much as fans are saying that, you know. I guess that's my point.
Yeah. Oh, no, I think this is a really nuanced topic, right? Because I think the response to that would be, right, but why give up those pieces when there are pitchers that are available without having to give them up?
Right.
And I thought that you were bringing in new ownership with money to spend. And I think that's the part that, like, is probably the reason for the most consternation. And not that I don't even think that, aside from the craziest of the crazy fans, I do think that most Orioles fans, most are reasonable, and no one thought that they were going to be in on Juan Soto or that they were going to spend exorbitantly. And I know that you can make an argument, well, hey, you know, the Orioles couldn't absorb a contract like Max Fried the way that the Yankees can, because if it bites them, then it hurts more than it hurts the Yankees. And, like, I can accept that all those things are true, but I do think measuring it against all of the race to the finish line conversation and there being someone who talked about what it meant to him to come in and be the Orioles owner and try to win a World Series, like, I do think it's fair to ask the question of, well, if not now, will there ever be a point? Like, you do seem like you have the nucleus. Is it just that you're never going to spend that type of money on a baseball player?
Yeah, no. I think we're in a really interesting moment where listen, 6 weeks ago, the owner of this baseball team said that he wants to go out and speed up the effort to win a World Series because he's 75 years old.
Right.
And this offseason, it does not seem like his general manager is willing to speed up the effort, at least perhaps as much as fans are interpreting David Rubenstein's comments to be. Now, I don't even need to give the caveat that the offseason's not over. There's still a lot of time left. I think the thing that I'm not exactly matching with is, for me, I guess I'm more of a pessimist. I never expected them to re-sign Corbin Burnes,
right,
especially at the number that it's going to be, right? So if you look at the starting pitching market, every single starting pitcher who has signed has received more money than they were projected to get, right? If Blake Snell's getting 182 and Max Fried's getting 218, that means Corbin Burnes is getting more than that. And Max Fried has a forearm issue. Corbin Burnes' strikeout rate has declined in 3 straight seasons. And I don't need to explain the downsides of Blake Snell. They're obvious. And so I'm not saying that the Orioles shouldn't go out and sign those guys. I'm not saying that the teams that signed them made bad decisions, but I don't think the Orioles, at least at the present moment, are in a position to hand out 5, 6, 7, 8-year contracts to guys that have such obvious risks attached to them. And if you really look at it, there's a chance that these pitchers, those 3 in particular, that if they had signed one of them, or if they signed Corbin Burnes, that by the time that contract starts to look really bad and starts to hamper the team, where you're paying a pitcher $30 million who maybe isn't the type of pitcher who's worth $30 million, that's when Gunnar Henderson, Adley Rutschman, Jordan Westberg are hitting free agency.
Mm-hmm.
Do you really want to be spending $30 million on a 36-year-old starting pitcher when you're gonna need that money to pay those guys? And so the other thing that I found interesting from the winter meetings was Mike Elias discussing payroll, which is always a fun thing for fans to think of when Mike Elias talks about payroll.
Right.
Listen, this thing is going to steadily increase. Okay, in 2023 it was $60 million. This year this past season it was like 93.5. Okay, in 2025 it looks like it's going to be somewhere in the 100 to 120 range. If they trade for a starting pitcher. This thing is going to steadily increase, but it was never in my expectations for them to go out and get a top guy. And just one last thing before you get to your next question. I think the thing that's a little bit weird for me when it comes to the fan reaction, which again is totally understanding, because this fan base has been starved for decades by an organization that for the most part has taken advantage of them. And so I'm never going to point to the fans and say that the reaction is unfair, but where I'm finding it a little bit maybe intellectually dishonest, for example, is that if the Orioles had signed Yusei Kikuchi, early in the offseason, okay, which would have filled a big need. Left-handed starting pitcher, profiles as more of like a number 2. It would give them 3 number 2 starting pitchers with Grayson, Eflin, and Kikuchi, and then you have Bradish coming back late in the season. If they had done that, what would the discussion be? Because now we're in a situation where it almost feels like a lot of Orioles fans are saying, oh, if they don't get Corbin Burnes because they didn't sign Fried and they didn't sign Snell, if they don't get Corbin Burnes and instead they trade for Bryce Miller, who's a great young pitcher, right, or Mitch Keller, who's a good pitcher on a really favorable contract moving forward, if one of those things happens, it's like, oh, then this was a failure of an offseason because you didn't go out and give $200 million because that was our expectation. That's why I really don't that's what I don't really jive with.
It's an interesting. We're chatting with Jacob Calvin Meyer, the Baltimore Sun, here on GCR. Jacob, I know exactly what you're saying. I guess the response to that would be again, but it still costs you something, right? Like particularly one of those guys, because as you point out, it's going to be on favorable contracts. You're going to have to give up real pieces. So measuring like money versus prospects, and this goes back to the conversation from Trevor Rogers, where like I'm not trying to suggest that Connor Norby was going to be a difference maker, but, you know, given who got hurt a couple days later, we are going to think about that for some time. And I guess the other part of it, too, being that, like, if the argument was that you're saving all of that money to spend on, you know, a Gunnar Henderson, Adley Rutschman, I think a lot of this fan base would say, okay, we get it. But, man, it really does feel tough to think that you're going to be able to do deals with those guys at this point, given, that we're talking about guys that Adley Rutschman is already reaching arbitration. Gunnar Henderson is not far away from it. And it just sort of feels like your window for doing that. Now it's just a question of, are you willing to spend, like for Gunnar, you know, the ungodly amount of money that he would get if he were to reach free agency, because I just can't see in any world his group saying, no, we'll still do something hometown when they're this close to making real money anyway.
Yeah, no. So your point about trades, generally speaking, is spot on in the long term, right? Like you can't just continually trade for guys over and over and over again and then never.
Yeah, you're going to be depleted, right? You're going to be depleted at some point. Yeah, it's going to be gone.
Right, but admittedly, we're really only a year into this thing. Like, they didn't really give up anything for Jack Flaherty. So they gave up two good prospects for Corbin Burnes. They gave up a couple lower prospects, 3 lower prospects for Zach Eflin. And then they gave up Connor Norby and Kyle Stowers, 2 guys who many people said didn't really have futures in Baltimore, to get Trevor Rogers. And so you're right. In the long term, you can't. At some point, you're going to have to spend money to either sign guys to extensions or to spend money in free agency. I guess my point is where I'm willing to. I don't think the phrase "give Elias a pass" is right, but I'll use it anyway. Is like this free agent market is crazy, and all of these starting pitchers are getting overpaid, and it just seems to me that the frustration is that the hope that having David Rubenstein at the top of the organization made some people think that they were going to sign, give out $250 million to Corbin Burnes. And frankly, I don't think that's a particularly smart baseball decision. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't make it, because most of these Andrew Friedman, the GM of the Dodgers, has a famous quote from like 2016, which is that if you're rational about every free agent, then you'll finish third for every free agent. Right. And perhaps that's something that Mike Elias and his group will have to reckon with moving forward, now that they can actually compete for free agents because they have an actual
as a lot of us like to say, like, you're not going to hang a banner for making like, oh, we nailed that, like we got it right about this free agent. You don't get to have a parade for that.
Right, exactly. And so yes, at some point you will have to spend on free agents. And I think the other thing that can make the off seasons a little bit more frustrating for Orioles fans, and this is like a little bit inside baseball, but the reason it feels like they haven't been in on a ton of free agents is because the Orioles front office might be the least leaky front office in all of baseball. Mm-hmm. Right? They don't. Right? For Adley Rutschman was an obvious number 1 overall pick in 2019, like the most obvious number 1 overall pick, and technically there were like no actual reports going into that draft that they were going to take him, because nobody in this front office. Right? It makes my job harder. It makes a lot of our jobs harder, but. So it's like the Boston Red Sox are in on every single free agent. And it's like, that just, to me, that reads that the Boston Red Sox the front office likes talking to the media, right? And so of course the Orioles front office is in on some of these guys. I just don't think they're really leaking it to a bunch of people. And so, listen, this is an interesting offseason because of the possibilities, the range of outcomes, and I also don't think it can be forgotten that they have checked off one of their bigger boxes, which is the Tyler O'Neill signing, which I've also seen a strange amount of negativity surrounding because people are overreacting to his splits and how good he's been against lefties compared against righties. But I also can't ignore the fact that, it's not I don't want to give out a participation trophy, but you go 6 years without signing a free agent to a multi-year contract. And in the first month of your first offseason with an actual owner, you do that. That's something that makes me think, combined with the Corbin Burnes trade, combined with the Zach Eflin trade, that they're going to do things that they're willing to increase payroll.
So let me pose it this way, Jacob. Like if we give them the assumption that there is still another pitcher coming, to the point whether it's Cease or Miller or Castillo, Keller, whoever it is, if there's one more at least bulk pitcher, if not, viable number one, like a Cease would be, it is then if you assume aggression to the mean for Adley Rutschman and reasonable jumps from Jackson Holliday, Colton Cowser in particular, does it feel like this lineup, with the addition of Tyler O'Neill and the subtraction of Anthony Santander, that's good enough to win a World Series?
Yeah, that's a great question. Now, just one more thing on starting pitchers before I go to the lineup.
Okay.
If we get to spring training and Mike Elias hasn't acquired a starting pitcher,
like a legitimate,
then he deserves all the criticism that he'll get. I'm just not willing to.
I get it.
To say,
I get it. Right.
We went through the winter meeting.
Right.
Yeah. So when it comes to the lineup, I think the difficult stage that the Orioles are in is that they almost have to see. You almost have to wait and see what these young guys turn into. If Adley can get back to what he was, or even better than what he was, can Gunnar take the next step and be like kind of what Bobby Witt was this past season? What's the future look like for Kjerstad and Westberg and those guys? Because you look at the lineup and you draw it out. There's not really a lot of open spaces for them to acquire guys or sign guys and plug them in, because you've already one of the main criticisms of getting O'Neill is that now you're blocking Kjerstad again. And it's like, if you go out and get a second baseman, then you're blocking Holliday. If you go out and get a third baseman and move Westberg to second, then you're blocking Holliday. And so the challenge is that I'm not really sure that there's much that they can do on the offensive side to improve those things, other than maybe what they've already done, which is get some new hitting coaches in the building, which is hope that Adley Rutschman can get back to who he was. But the offense was not a problem until basically the postseason. Like, it obviously slumped down the stretch, but it's not like it was the end of the world at the end of the season. That was just basically normal regression that we saw in the second half, combined with injuries to Westberg and Mountcastle and Arias and other guys. And so is this offense good enough to win a World Series? I'm not sure, but that I might have an answer to that later next season when we see some of the ways that these guys have developed. I'm just not sure what their path is, unless you look at it and say, because the other thing that people are talking about to get a starting pitcher is, you trade away Mountcastle,
right?
Or you trade away Kjerstad to get those guys, and then you're hampering your offense a little bit. And so it is kind of a tough situation where do you just trade for your prospect depth to get that starting pitcher? Are you willing to part ways with Mountcastle, who has been up and down, but he's a proven hitter. Like, this guy can hit, and if he stays healthy, he's going to hit 20 to 25 bombs.
Yeah, and you just move the walls back in to help him out. Right.
Exactly. And so, is it possible that Jackson Holliday doesn't play well next season and Connor Norby is, a legitimate good player for the Marlins? Yes. And will they regret that Trevor Rogers traded if that's the case and Trevor Rogers doesn't pitch well? Yes. But I think the thing that I'm looking at is, I would be surprised if Adley Rutschman doesn't get back to the hitter that he was, just because when you're that good and you're a generational talent, you're going to go through slumps, but you typically bounce back, especially with whatever he was dealing with, which nobody seems to know. And then Jackson Holliday, I am probably higher than most people on him, and so I would expect Jackson Holliday to play in 2025 the way that people expected him to in 2024. I think that would be a big boost to the offense in a ton of different ways. And then if Westbrook stays healthy and so that then you've got, and then if Cowser takes the next step, right? Those are all the things that this offense can do to improve.
We'll link. If you haven't read the column, if you just go to BaltimoreSun.com, it's there. And of course, as he says, if they don't bring back Corbin Burns, the sky above Camden Yards will not fall. And I know that's true, but boy, it is an interesting time to say the least. I know it's at Jacob Calvin Meyer on Twitter. Jake, is there anything else that we can plug for you right now?
No, that's it. I appreciate you. I appreciate you having me on. It's been an interesting offseason, and this is a really interesting time for Orioles fans, considering the fact that there's hope and that there's the possibility that they could sign a guy like Corbin Burns. I would just implore people to not let that, get them in the dumps when they end up trading for Bryce Miller instead, for example. So,
Jake, it was a good conversation. I really enjoyed this. Let's do it again soon. All right. Thank you for taking the time, and happy holidays to you, brother.
Awesome. Thank you. You too.
Jacob Calvin Meyer, the Baltimore Sun. Appreciate him taking the time. And again, it's worth the thought. Like, we're all feeling the same thing, and it's not unwarranted, but we have to do it reasonably. Like, we have to remember the offseason isn't over. We have to remember, like, all of those things are still on the table. So that's where I am. That's the conversation. All right, do you want to recap picks real quick right now, and then we'll do Jeremy, and then we can get to Pats, and then wrap it up by telling with Andrew Catalon? Does that seem like the best play at this point? All right, let's do that.
Solid play.
Picks recap for this week. God, if only I would have stuck with my picks last week, then I'd be in a much different position, because your boy actually tied for the high water mark this week at 7-2.
He's hot.
And yet I'm still 3 games behind in last place. 7-2 week, still not enough.
I mean, you can see it though. You
Still
can see
not
it. It's back.
God,
back in view.
Damn. All right, Army Navy. Look, man. To be fair, if Navy had been 6.5-point favorites, I wouldn't have taken them either. I just didn't think anybody should be a 6.5-point favorite in an Army Navy game. Turns out Navy should have been favored by even more. Just a great day.
Yeah.
The
Army
balls
was never the right side of that.
It's really wild how, like, when Navy jumps out to the lead, I'm like, all right, this Army team's too good for this to be the story. But as we said in the lead up to the game, and with all due respect to your brother, I'm not trying to fight with your brother.
No, that's the last time he makes a pick for me. Yeah.
Well, but this is like, we overvalued Army because of the last thing that we saw from them.
Mm-hmm.
The last thing that we saw from them was an incredible performance against Tulane. And it was easy to say, well, Navy got drubbed by Tulane, but we were all ignoring that Blake Horvath didn't play. And I'm not trying to say that, like, if Blake Horvath plays in that game, they definitively beat Tulane. I don't know what happens if Blake Horvath plays in that game. But we made way too much of a one-to-one comparison there that convinced ourselves that Army was definitively better than Navy. And did it help that Navy was off the week before while Army had to play a game? I don't know. I don't know. But I don't know that there was nearly as much separation between Army and Navy as some people were suggesting there was based on that, like, one specific result. They both got drubbed by Notre Dame. Like, they both... I think the season was largely the same. Navy had this bizarre circumstance where they played at Rice, and there was 8 weather delays.
Right.
And the game took all day, and they just never – they're stuck in this tiny locker room, and they never really responded to it. There's a lot there. But I still didn't expect – I still thought that as Navy jumped out, like, well, the Army's going to have an answer. And when they went for it on 4th down and converted and they went and scored a touchdown, I was like, all right, game on. But it never really was. Now, who knows if Navy ends up punting and not going for the fake punt late? Like, what might have happened? That was ballsy. Ballsy. Well freaking done, Brian Newberry. What a ballsy decision. And an Army-Navy game, worth it. But congratulations, Navy. Huge win. All right, we talked about it Thursday night. It was an ugly game, but the Rams did beat the 49ers in the slop. By the way, I got the point on Navy. So did Jeremy. So did John in Little Rock. So did what's going on over there?
You want to know what's going on?
What?
So I need to get a new car, and so so I have like dealers calling me. I don't know how to say don't call me between 10 and 12.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Well, you have to get a new car because something bad happened.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay though. It's still drivable.
Is
but
it
it's like,
is it your fault?
Well, it's a deer's fault. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that sucks, man. That sucks. Kyle and Ryan were also on Navy. The Rams, it was myself, Griffin, Proctor, KZ, Paul, and Ryan Chell. On my only 2 losses, I did. When Miami got the ball back late, down by 8, I was like, oh, this is good news. Because they'll probably go down and score a touchdown and go for 2, and then like things will be all right. All right, I actually need to take a break. I'm getting too many calls.
Okay.
Yeah. I need to take a break. All right. I'm sorry. I have to take a break right now. We'll come back. We'll finish picks, and then we'll talk to Jeremy.
The ultimate fan experience awaits you at Sports and Social Maryland. See how we're raising the sports bar with our massive 100-foot media wall featuring 40 HD TVs and a 47-foot big screen. Bet on your favorite teams and this year's biggest events at the FanDuel Sportsbook while enjoying your favorite beers and cocktails, plus our delicious takes on bar food classics. Visit Sports and Social at Live Casino and Hotel Maryland at Arundel Mills. Must be 21. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Driving in Maryland? Did you know an Easy Pass from DriveEasyMD.com can save you time and money? Of course you did, because you are a thrifty driver. An antenna reads your Easy Pass transponder and automatically deducts the toll from your Easy Pass account. Learn more at DriveEasyMD.com.
PressBox's Project Game Day is the place to be after every game this season. Join Glenn Clark, Rita Hubbard, Super Bowl 35 champion Femi Ayanbadejo, and our cast of regulars as they break down what happened, why it mattered, and what it means moving forward. You can watch the show at PressBoxOnline.com/gameday or PressBox's Facebook and YouTube pages. Project Game Day is brought to you by the Green Turtle Sportsbook in Towson and Canton, Easy Pass, and HelpMyGamblingProblem.org. So join us for Project Game Day after every game day this football season at PressBoxOnline.com/game day.
Treat yourself and taste the Baltimore tradition that is the legendary Costas Inn. Hey, it's Stan the Fan Charles. For over 50 years, the Costas Inn has been a Baltimore original, dishing out their amazingly scrumptious, fat, award-winning crab cakes and steamed crabs. Every season is crab season at Costas, so make your plans now by calling 410-477-1975 and reserve your taste of heaven. Sit back, crack some crabs, and watch the Ravens chase down another title on Costas' 15 TVs. On Monday nights, Costas offers their half-pound jumbo lump crab cake with 2 sides for under $30, and there are nightly specials Monday through Friday. So head on down to the Costas Inn at 4100 North Point Boulevard or visit them at CostasInn.com.
The votes were all counted, and the results are official. Royal Farms was named #1 for food in the USA Today 10 Best poll, receiving more votes than any other convenience store chain in America. The next time you want to get some good food fast, doesn't it make sense to go to Royal Farms? Voted best in the USA and home of world-famous chicken. Real fresh, real fast, Royal Farms.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution, and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
The top high school basketball talent from across the country returns to the Wycomico Civic Center December 26th through 30th for the Governor's Challenge presented by Pohanka of Salisbury. Witness 5 full days of elite competition featuring over 140 high school basketball teams from 16 states plus Canada. Multiple top 10 teams and nationally ranked players will display their talents on the court. Don't miss the best experience in high school hoops. For tickets and info, visit govchallenge.org.
Coming back in here with Glenn and the other guy, Garrett, whatever his name is. You know who they are.
Hey, everybody, I got to apologize. Have a small family emergency that I'm going to have to attend to, and so we're gonna have to wrap up a little bit early today. What we'll do is we'll post a picks recap up at glennclarkradio.com, and we'll also get Pats on the Ass up on the website, glennclarkradio.com. And so, yeah, there's not a whole lot that I can tell you right now. I hope it's not. I don't know. I don't want to say too much. It's an exciting week at Press Box. The print issue is coming. That'll be available on Wednesday. We'll look forward to that. And Griffin, can you remind everybody one more time about what's going on at Live Casino and Hotel?
Sure can. You're getting $7 over at Live Casino and Hotel because every time that Baltimore or Washington's football team score touchdowns during home games this season, Live Rewards members are getting $7 in free slot play. You have to have your Live Rewards card inserted into the slot machine. Any slot machine on the floor be actively playing, and then you get your prize $7 in free slot play. Adirona Mills must be 21. Please play responsibly. For help, visit mdgamblinghelp.org or call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I apologize that we're going to go like one break to another. Or I tell you what, Griffin, do you want to go ahead and we'll talk? I can talk to Andrew Catalon right now. Then take the final break of the show, and then if you can just come back in and go over Tubular to wrap it up, right? Like, because that's all available at GlennClarkRadio.com. So we'll finish up the show that way. I had the opportunity to catch up with Andrew Catalon a little bit earlier, so he called the game yesterday. We'll let you hear from that, and then Griffin is going to guide you home the rest of the way today, and I will hope to see you guys tomorrow. All right, thank you. Well, of course, the Ravens pasted the Giants yesterday in New Jersey, getting back in the swing of things out of the bye. Joining us now, this man, of course, was on the call for the game on CBS. He is Mr. Andrew Catalon, and he's with us now here on GCR. Andrew, it's Glenn. Happy holidays to you. Thank you, as always, taking the time for us.
You got it, Glenn. Always good to be with you.
Man, I'm guessing if you and I had talked last week, we would have said something like, yeah, sure, on paper this doesn't look like it's going to be a game, but the Ravens have had this, like, really weird problem with teams like this during the course of the season and losing to the Browns and the Raiders. So while there's not a ton of jubilation in Baltimore about beating this New York Giants team, the reality is this is the type of game that has tripped them up before. And it is somewhat of a measurement just to make sure that they got the job done yesterday.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, you look at the Raiders game, which I actually called that one week 2 in Baltimore, and that was a stunner. And then obviously the Cleveland one, we didn't see that one coming either. So I think that if you're a Ravens fan, you have every right to think in the back of your mind, why, what, do we have, is this going to happen again, But the Giants are a really bad football team right now. So I think it was a good sign for the Ravens that it was a workmanlike, professional, let's just take care of business and get on to these next 3 games, which are massive. They obviously had to have that one, and they did. The Giants are just not a good team right now, and the Ravens really had their way right from the start. Even though Lamar fumbled, I think right after that, everything just clicked, and away they went.
Andrew, is there anything that you gathered in the week leading up to the game about where this team was and having your meetings and, anything that you got about their focus coming out of their bye?
Yeah, and we mentioned this, a couple of times in the broadcast. Sitting or meeting with Lamar the way that we met with him, you could tell, and he even made comments that everybody saw down there about how he was antsy to get back on the field. Yeah. We saw how emotional he was after the loss to Philly. He was ready to go. I mean, he was really, hearing Zay Flowers tell us just how Lamar demands excellence, and John Harbaugh reiterating that as well. This is a guy that I feel, and I've met with Lamar throughout his career, it was the most determined and most focused that I had heard him talk about what lies ahead. Now, obviously, he's always had that in him, but I don't know if he always expresses that. And to me, I felt a difference this time talking with him, and I think that I think Ravens fans are probably going to see that as well in the way that he plays, and he already got off to a great start yesterday.
And, there was a lot made about with his mom cussing him out after the Eagles game. We did see a little bit more running, although I thought it was more designed running yesterday. Do we need to maybe hire Lamar Jackson's mom to be like an offensive consultant for the Baltimore Ravens the rest of the season?
Yeah, John Harbaugh joked, you always got to listen to mom. And we asked specifically about those comments, and he said, look, I trust Lamar to play the game the right way, whatever he feels fit for that day. And I think that's some of the danger of this Ravens offense for opponents. They could beat you in a lot of different ways. And if Lamar is turning it up, running the football, that is a handful, as we know. If it's Henry going off, if it's the deep passes like we saw yesterday, I'm pretty high on this Ravens team right now. I think they're going to win the division. I think they're a handful going into the playoffs. I'm pretty high on them right now. I've been high on them all year, and it's seeing it firsthand again yesterday kind of reminded me of why I've liked them all year.
Andrew Catalon was on the call yesterday for CBS. He's with us here on GCR. Andrew, if you say that, obviously that means that you expect the Ravens to win this Saturday against the Steelers, because if they don't, the division is shot. It's interesting because I feel the same thing that I think you feel. I think the Ravens are a better team than the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think the Ravens should have won the first game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, but there's just been this weird kind of inconsistency about this team that I think leaves a lot of Ravens fans concerned going into this rematch. Obviously, they've had the history against the Steelers in recent years hasn't been very good. Do you have a sense for how it can all come together for the Ravens and how they can avoid all of these kind of slip-ups that we have seen during the course of the season?
Yeah, so I agree. I do feel that they'll win this game this week. Take nothing away from Pittsburgh and the respect I have from them and the season that they've had, and I know the history has not been kind to Baltimore of late. I just feel at home that this Ravens team is just going to come out firing. That's the way that I kind of see it right now with them. And my biggest concern with Baltimore, and I think you would probably share in this, these penalties have to get cleaned up. I mean, it's just a mess that they've now had 4 games of over 100 yards in penalties, and that does worry me a little bit, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But I just feel like this offense is getting to another gear right now. And I thought we mentioned this too in the broadcast. John Harbaugh said they spent a lot of time looking at their offensive tendencies during the bye week, and there's some things that they want to try to get ahead of the curve on in terms of staying one step ahead of what they think the defense will do. And I think those types of things that we probably didn't even see yesterday, but that we could see down the road, I don't know what they are, but I feel like this is you've heard Lamar say he's more comfortable in year 2 of this offense. You've heard him say he's speaking up more. I just feel like that this team is about to hit a different level right now, and that's why I'm pretty confident in them.
Yesterday the penalties, obviously the Matabike one, that's completely avoidable. I know not all penalties are made equal, right? Like sometimes, and you guys referenced how 50-50 some of the calls were, and I don't know. Of all of the days where penalties are part of the story, oddly, yesterday isn't the one that I think I worked. Part of it is because, of course, the Ravens won 35-14, so life is good. But I don't know. Yesterday was maybe not as many of them as there were. The types of penalties perhaps not as critical to me as the weeks where we see offsides or false starts, and all of a sudden you're in 1st and 15, 1st and 20 kind of regularly the way they were, say, against Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that some of the penalties yesterday were more out of being overly aggressive per se than silly mistakes or pre-snap penalties. We didn't see as many of those, so I would say that's encouraging. But anytime you're over 100 yards in penalties, I mean, that has to get cleaned up, especially as you start to see better teams and better competition here down the stretch.
One guy who I think jumped off the page to a lot of people, 2 guys in the secondary, what Ardarius Washington has brought to this team since he's been inserted. This was, as Andrew, you recognized from having done games earlier this year, this was the worst pass defense in football. Just that move alone has made a significant difference. And then how much did Nate Wiggins jump off the page at you yesterday as a guy who's kind of come into his own, living up to the billing as being a first-round pick?
Yeah, it was really interesting in our, talks this week with our crew leading up to the game. Jason McCourty, former corner, kept bringing up Nate Wiggins, how he wanted to focus on him, how he wanted to talk about him. I could just tell that Jason was really into what Nate is bringing to the team right now, and he was up for the challenge yesterday. I thought he played a really good game. I think it's exciting how he's starting to develop and grow, and I think that he's become, as you said, a big reason why this pass defense is, starting to turn a corner, starting to get a little bit better. I feel like they're all kind of figuring out their roles, and it's starting to gel. Now you throw in Michael Pierce back, you throw in Kyle Van Noy up front.
that could put a little more pressure on the quarterback to get the ball out a little bit quicker. And I think that could even help the secondary even more going forward.
That's a great point, by the way. Michael Pierce, who, like, I looked at the stat sheet at the end of the day, and I said, how did Michael Pierce only have one tackle? It felt like you guys were calling his name on every play. It felt like he was active. But it's just the little things. It's taking on the double team. It's being a disruptive force. Like, despite the fact that the stats don't back it up, it really did seem like he had a genuine impact on yesterday's game.
Yeah, and I think that position is just that. You don't necessarily see a lot of the stats in the box score, but you're right. We talked about him a lot, and his presence was felt back in the lineup for Baltimore.
Andrew, it seems like in the rest of the country, the MVP discussion, the door's been slammed shut, right? And that seems a little odd with 3 weeks still to play, but I get it. Like Josh Allen, the Bills are having a special season. Josh Allen, we all know, is a special player, and he's never won an MVP before, so it feels like there's also a little bit of a, hey, this has to be the year that we finally give it to him. The strange part being that Lamar Jackson's numbers are largely across the board better than Josh Allen's this season. I'm not trying to bang the drum because I sort of accept that this is the way it works. It's narrative-driven, but what do you make of the argument related to NFL MVP at this point?
Yeah, we showed Lamar's stats in our broadcast yesterday through 13 games in each of his 2 MVP seasons and this year, and they're better. I mean, he's having an amazing year. I'm with you in the sense of let's not call it right now. I think that we have to wait till the end of the season. I think that you're right. The narrative is that Josh and maybe even Saquon are ahead of Lamar. Do I agree with that? You know, I'm not one to make a decision when so much can still happen down the stretch. I mean, if Josh Allen gets the Bills the 1 seed, do you feel differently? If the Eagles get the 1 seed and Barkley goes off, do you feel differently? If the Ravens, win the division and Lamar continues to play lights out, I'm with you. I think it's too early to call it is all I would say.
I understand, and I appreciate that. What a thought to let everything play out before crowning someone. And then, I'll present it to you this way. You see all these teams. Who to you is the team to beat in the AFC at this point?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I've been high on Baltimore all year, and that includes after the Week 2 game against Vegas. I still thought that was just an anomaly, and the first 2 games just didn't go their way. I would say that I would right now put Buffalo ahead of Baltimore in the AFC. And obviously everyone seems to be counting out Kansas City this year. I don't know if it's Chiefs fatigue or if they just don't see them dominating, the scoreboard necessarily and playing more close games than they're used to, that people have kind of gone down on them. But I was always one of those guys that said, well, until somebody beats New England, you can't pick against them. And, it's hard I agree with the sentiment that the Chiefs don't look as good as they did in the past, but it's still hard to pick against them. But, again, it's going to come down to who gets hot at the right time. And that's what it always is in the playoffs. And I think a hot Baltimore team is definitely capable of winning the AFC.
Oh, this is very Ric Flair to me. This is very to be the man, you got to beat the man type of situation. You can tell me how the Chiefs look human, but, they still seem to have figured out a way to win almost every game that they've played this season. So, yeah. I'm going to default to them until someone proves otherwise in the playoffs, which is a very difficult thing to do. Andrew Catalon, what's next on the schedule for you? Where are you headed this week?
We're still finalizing the schedule. Some of these, I think we're going to do.
At least you don't have to fight holiday travel or anything like that.
I know. I think we're going to do the Las Vegas-Jacksonville game.
Okay.
I think that's what our crew has penciled in, but it's not in pen yet because I feel like there still could be some changes to the schedule. So that's what we're looking at right now.
I'm trying to. I don't want to trash anything, and I know you have to do the game. I was just trying to think of a metaphor to go from Lamar Jackson to Desmond Ridder or something like that. What the heck? Yeah. It's not. It's not exactly. Yeah, I understand that. You've got a job to do, and I appreciate that. Dude, always appreciate you, by the way. Thank you for taking the time for us once again. For you and your family, have a wonderful holiday season, and let's talk again real soon, all right? Sports.
You got it. Anytime. Thank you.
All right, there we go. That was Andrew Catalon from CBS Sports. Always appreciate him taking the time for us to, and obviously on the call yesterday, and going over some of the things from yesterday's game. We do have one more break to get to. I'll give a quick tidbit on the other side as well as Tubular. Before we do hit to that final break, I do want to remind everyone about the Governor's Challenge coming up. In a little over a week, about 10 days from now is when it first tips off. The top high school basketball talent from across the country is returning to the Wycomic Go Civic Center on December 26th through December 30th for the Governor's Challenge presented by Pohanka of Salisbury. Witness 5 full days of elite competition featuring over 140 high school basketball teams from 16 states, plus Canada. Multiple top 10 teams and nationally ranked players will be displaying their talents on the court, and again, all right here in Maryland at the Wycomico Civic Center. Don't miss the best experience in high school hoops. For tickets and more info, visit govchallenge.org. That is govchallenge.org. All right, we'll be right back. We'll get a quick tidbit, just some quick tidbit info for you guys, as well as Tubular on the other side of this break.
Visit Harford County this holiday season for a brand new event. You'll feel like you stepped into a holiday movie. Harford Holidays is overflowing with the spirit of the holiday season. You'll be amazed by the jaw-dropping light displays, thrilled by a visit to Santa's workshop, and have the holiday time of your life with sleigh rides, a special vendor village, s'mores making stations, and so much more. It's a holiday light experience, new at Ripken Stadium, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, December 6th through December 22nd. For ticket information, head to visitharford.com. You'll have the happiest holiday season ever.
Treat yourself and taste the Baltimore tradition that is the legendary Costas Inn. Hey, it's Stan the Fan Charles. For over 50 years, the Costas Inn has been a Baltimore original, dishing out their amazingly scrumptious, fat, award-winning crab cakes and steamed crabs. Every season is crab season at Costas, so make your plans now by calling 410-477-1975 and reserve your taste of heaven. Sit back, crack some crabs, and watch the Ravens chase down another title on Costas' 15 TVs. On Monday nights, Costas offers their half-pound jumbo lump crab cake with 2 sides for under $30, and there are nightly specials Monday through Friday. So head on down to the Costas Inn at 4100 North Point Boulevard or visit them at costasinn.com.
Make the most out of every day in your Toyota RAV4. Available in hybrid or gas-only models. A RAV4 can get you where you want to go in style. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new RAV4s from your local Toyota dealer today.
The drug scene in Maryland is changing. Fentanyl and xylazine are being added to street drugs, and you may not even know it. Xylazine is not even intended for humans, and fentanyl is an opioid 50 times stronger than heroin, and contributed to over 80% of overdose deaths in our state. Anyone who uses drugs, even occasionally, is at risk of overdose. To learn more, visit stopoverdose.maryland.gov or call or text 988.
The votes were all counted, and the results are official. Royal Farms was named #1 for food in the USA Today 10 Best poll, receiving more votes than any other convenience store chain in America. The next time you want to get some good food fast, doesn't it make sense to go to Royal Farms? Voted best in the USA and home of world-famous chicken. Real fresh, real fast, Royal Farms.
The latest edition of Press Box is available now. On the cover, Brooks Dubose profiles Maryland basketball forwards Derek Queen and Julian Reese as the Baltimore-built duo reunites in College Park with hopes of bringing the Terps back to prominence. Also inside, meet college basketball players from all of the area's D1 programs. Press Box is available for free at over 500 locations throughout the region, including 60 Royal Farm stores, where you can read the entire issue online at PressBoxOnline.com, where you can also find great betting advice and the best daily coverage of the Orioles, Ravens, and Terps.
Need a trophy or award that's as unique as the achievement? Look no further than Crown Trophy. With locations in Owings Mills and Gaithersburg, they specialize in custom trophies, plaques, and medals for any occasion. From sports and academic awards to employee recognition and corporate gifts, visit crowntrophy.com today and let them help you create a lasting memory for your school, team, or business. Crown Trophy is a proud supporter of the Maryland Public Secondary Schools Athletic Association. crowntrophy.com.
One of the things that's definitely wrong with this country is that this dude still has a job somehow, some way. Glenn Clark.
Just Griffin right now, but yeah, we're winding things down here on this Monday edition of the program. I will toss everyone a tidbit in just a second, but first, let us hear a word from our tidbit sponsor of the day.
The top high school basketball talent from across the country once again returns to the Wycomico Civic Center December 26th through the 30th for the Governor's Challenge, presented by Pohanka of Salisbury. Witness 5 full days of elite competition featuring over 140 high school basketball teams from 16 states plus Canada. Multiple top 10 teams and nationally ranked players will display their talents on the court. Don't miss the best experience in high school hoops. For tickets and information, visit govchallenge.org.
All right, there we go. And I guess before tidbit, I could go ahead and update everyone where we are in the picks contest. Glenn, as he mentioned, it was the high mark for the week. Actually, tied with our good friend James Revere for the high mark of the week. We talked about the Army-Navy game. I was on Army, unfortunately. I'm sorry to all the Navy fans out there. I should have known they were getting 6.5 points. That was never the right side to be on. Thursday night game. Glenn and I were on the Rams, as were John and Ken Zales and Paul Valley and Ryan Shell, getting the win with the Rams taking on the 49ers in that very, very slow, ugly Thursday night game last week. Miami at Houston. The Texans, they tried to make it close, but they did end up holding on and covering against the Dolphins. We were split on that one, 6-6. I was on the Texans, as was James Revere, Joe Serpico, Proctor, Zales, and Kyle Ottenheimer on the Houston Texans there. So that was one of Glenn's 2 losses on the week, picking the Miami Dolphins there. Indy was at Denver, and man, what a different game that possibly could have been if Jonathan Taylor somehow, I don't know. I don't understand. I don't understand it. I'm as baffled as everyone else, in the rest of the sports world here. And at why players are continuing to drop the ball at the line of scrimmage, or the goal line before scoring a touchdown. I don't know how it started. I don't know how you break that habit either. You just have to, I guess, be completely conscious and not do it. But yeah, Jonathan Taylor, a crazy swing, because they would have gone back in front. Instead, Denver gets the ball back, and they end up scoring, I think, like twice, 3 times unanswered to close out the game in a pretty easy victory against the Colts. So the Broncos covered the -4. 3 backers of the Indianapolis Colts. We had Jeremy Kahn, Joe Serpico, and Kyle Ottenheimer on the Indianapolis Colts. Then, I guess it kind of lived up to the billing. Buffalo at Detroit. Glenn already we talked about it a little bit with Mike Golic Jr. Just a crazy game. Both teams in the 40s again. The Bills playing back-to-back games now with both teams scoring into the 40s. Must-watch television, I guess. I was on Detroit, along with a good majority of everyone else. 4 backers of the Bills. Glenn was on the Bills. Got a big win there. James Revere, again, those 2 went 7-2 on the week. So they were both on the Bills. John and Little Rock and Ryan Shell both on the Buffalo Bills in that one. Tampa Bay was going to Los Angeles, taking on the Chargers. Chargers were 3-point favorites. They did not win. They kind of got pasted by pasted might be a strong word. The Ravens pasted the Giants, but the Buccaneers did win comfortably against the LA Chargers. Certainly making Thursday night's game a lot more interesting now as the Broncos and Chargers face off on this coming Thursday night football edition. The Buccaneers get the win. So me and Glenn both had the Bucs, as did James. James Revere, John and Little Rock, joined by KZ, Kyle, and Paul Valley as well on the Bucs. Then Pittsburgh at Philly. That was pretty impressive from the Eagles. A 10.5-minute drive to end the game. It was pretty wild to see Tomlin opt to punt. The 4th down, they were right around midfield, and they punt. It was 4th and 8, but you're down by two touchdowns at that point in the 4th quarter. It does feel like I kind of am with Steelers fans at being a little upset with with Mike Tomlin opting to punt it back there. I mean, they do end up pinning him at the 3. Who would have thought they would have not seen the ball again with just under 11 minutes left? The Eagles pinned at their own 3-yard line. They end up running the ball out, just 4-yarding, paper cutting them to death, working their way up the field. Pretty impressive. A victory for the Eagles, and obviously the Steelers have potentially more problems to figure out with whether George Pickens is playing this week, the extent of T.J. Watt's ankle injury. So that's all certainly interesting. The Steelers, for the first time this season as an underdog, they did not even win. So 5.5 points, not enough, as they lose by 2 touchdowns. I was on the Steelers, along with a good bulk of everyone else. Joe Serpico was on the Eagles, James Revere and Jeremy Kahn on Philly as well, and Kyle Ottenheimer on the Philadelphia Eagles. So they get the win there. Sunday Night Football, Green Bay landed 3 points at Seattle, and they looked pretty good. Sam Howell, not a good quarterback. Hopefully, for Seahawks' sake, they can get Geno Smith back. I haven't really seen any updates yet. Obviously, did not finish the game after in the second half with I think it was a leg injury. So not sure what the extent of that is, but that would not be good for the Seahawks because Sam Howell did not look very capable of running that offense whatsoever. A late garbage time touchdown, making it look a little bit better than it did. It wasn't really garbage time, but a fourth quarter touchdown for the Seahawks, making it look a little bit better. But they had 6 points for the majority of that game. But yeah, Green Bay covers, so not getting points. John in Little Rock, John Proctor, and Kyle Ottenheimer on the Seattle Seahawks. And then yeah, I had to pick the Giants. 16.5 looked like way too much with what we'd seen from the Ravens. But yeah, the Ravens do take care of business against the Giants, covering the 16.5. So I lose a point there, as does Andrew Stetka and Joe Serpico, John in Little Rock, and Ryan Schell. We were on the Giants. So I end the week. I go 5-4. But yeah, the big one, James and Glenn going 7-2. Andrew Stetka went 2-7, but that doesn't really help out Glenn too much because Stecka's firmly in the middle of the pack here. So Ryan Schell still on the top. He is now just 2 games ahead of Ken Zales, and then myself and James Revere are both right there as well. We're 4 games back. John and Little Rock 5 games back, and then everyone else clustered in the middle of the table. Glenn is at the bottom of the table. He is 20 games off the lead, so I guess he doesn't have a shot there, but he is only 3 games back of Paul Valley and 6 games back of Joe Serpico and John Proctor. So it seems like it's a race between Glenn and Paul, but Glenn still pretty likely to be our loser. Now quickly I'll give a tidbit to everybody out there. Bills have scored, comes from our friend Dante Kopolitz Fleming on Twitter. Bills have scored 30 points in 8 straight games, tied for the longest streak in a season in NFL history, and that ties the Bills, I should say, with the 2013 Denver Broncos. They had a Peyton Manning on that team that would win the MVP. They ties them with the 2010 and 2007 New England Patriots. Tom Brady won the MVP both of those seasons, and the 2000 St. Louis Rams. Marshall Faulk won the MVP that year. So for Ravens fans that want Lamar Jackson to win the MVP, I have a Lamar Jackson ticket out there as well. So MVP ticket out there as well. So I hope that the streak doesn't continue, but it does seem like if you score 30 points in 8 straight games, 4 prior times, you have the MVP on your team. So credit to Josh Allen and the Bills there on that one. All right, let's flip gears now. We will get tubular and we will get out of here and wrap things up.
Have you ever thought of taking a cruise to these wonderful destinations with sunny skies and beautiful beaches? Well, wait no longer. We're ready for you to cruise from the Cruise Maryland Terminal.
Have a little phrase that you can go from baggage to margarita in about 15 minutes.
Choose fun with an array of destinations, onboard activities, entertainment, and world-class cuisine.
Contact your travel agent and book your cruise today. Let your adventure begin.
All right, there we go. Time for Totally Tubular now here on GCR as we wind things down. Not a whole lot sports-wise. We do have 2 Monday Night Football games. The Bears and the Vikings will be kicking off at 8 on ABC, and then on ESPN at 8:30, the Falcons and the Raiders. I am not sure. I guess there's not a Manning cast. I feel like that would be on ESPN too if it was. So I guess no Manning cast then. That's a bummer. That's a bummer for me at least. UMES Maryland Eastern Shore is home tonight. They take on Cairn University, a non-D1. That's at 7. You can watch it on the Delmarva Sports Network. Monumental will have Capital Stars at 8. NHL Network will have Panthers Oilers at 8:30, and then on USA you have Bournemouth West Ham at 3 p.m. for some Prem League soccer. WWE Raw on USA as well at 8 p.m. tonight. Non-sports-wise, there's really not a whole lot. I guess the big thing non-sports-wise is What We Do in the Shadows, the series finale tonight on FX, the series finale of What We Do in the Shadows. I know Glenn's a fan of that. I don't watch the show, sorry. Sorry to any What We Do in the Shadows fans, but series finale, that is 10 o'clock tonight on FX. Everything else, Nicole Kidman will be on Stephen Colbert if anybody is into that. She's got a new movie coming out on Christmas Day called Baby Girl. She's like a big high-powered CEO, and she has a torrid affair with a much younger intern, one of the Von Erich brothers from Iron Claw. I'm not sure. I'm not sure which Von Erich brother he was, but he was in that movie. But yeah, just a great classic Christmassy film there, as Nicole Kidman having an affair with a young intern at her big company. But yeah, just wanted to make sure I threw that there. Michael Bublé's Christmas in the City. That's on NBC tonight at 10 as well, if you're not going to be watching football. But yeah, that'll do it here for us today on GCR. We'll get obviously all the clips on the show on the archives tab. I guess I won't do the bit without Glenn here. But yeah, big thank you to everyone on the show today. Of course, Mike Golic Jr., Andrew Catalon joining us, and of course Jacob Calvin Meyer. We'll get that on the website. We will have picks, and as well as Glenn and I's Pats on the Ass. Make sure you get us your Pats on the Ass. Again, $50 gift certificate to the Costas Inn. Get yourself some crab this holiday season. You're automatically entered as once you reply on Blue Sky. You can email me, I guess, producer@pressboxonline.com is the email. Twitter as well to get your replies in for Pats on the Ass. Again, everything's going to be in limbo this week, so I don't want to say we're definitively going to be on at 10 tomorrow. I would like to think we're going to get some sort of programming for you tomorrow in some way, shape, or form. But if not, again, thank you for tuning in, and we will see you when we see you guys next. For as Glenn likes to say, Duke sucks.